What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down 4 different wide receiver press releases that all wide receivers need to learn. Let's get started. But before we get into these press releases, fellas, I want to talk to you about a great opportunity we have on our website. Wide receivers can now get access to a 4-month daily gym training schedule. It's not just about doing all the on-field drills, it's about doing the things in the gym that are going to translate to on-field play as a wide receiver. So we give you 4 months of exercises with the exact sets, reps, and examples of each exercise that all wide receivers should be doing. So if you guys want some more information on that, how you can get a 16-week wide receiver gym workout schedule, check out that very first link in that description below. We'd love to get you on that. Let's get back to this video. Alright guys, so this first release that we're going to be talking about is something called a slide release. So a slide release is a release that I personally only like when you are running a slant route, and it's going to be a slide crossover release. So we're going to combine the two together. So let's say, for example, you have a DB who's lined up inside shade of you and you have to run a slant, but it's like a later read slant. So maybe the quarterback's doing like an RPO, he's pulling the ball out and throwing. Maybe the quarterback is looking front side, then coming back to the slant backside is a later read. But this is a longer developing release, so we have to be a little bit more patient with my feet. That's why we would want to use this slide release. So what you're going to do is you got a DB who's inside shade. So the slide release is essentially where you are going to slide to the outside almost on like a 45-degree angle, kind of threatening his outside shoulder and his outside hip. So if you had a DB facing you here, we are trying to threaten his outside shoulder and hip to get him to go with us and open up the gate. So when we do this slide release, it is very important that when we slide, we have a good base and we're under control. So now this DB is kind of put in a bind here. He's got to commit to something. He can either sit to the inside and then give up the fade, or he could commit with the slide. I hit him with a crossover and make it look like a fade, and then I slip back underneath. So that's kind of the situation of the release. So let's break down the technique. So when guys do this slide release, one of the mistakes that they do is that they'll slide and they go too flat. When you go flat, there's way too much of a gap between you and this DB, so he's not threatened vertically. And even if he does jump, you still have to run the slant, and that's not going to get you separation. So we have to make sure that we attack at a 45. But how I can do that is by using something called a kick step. A kick step is going to help you throw your hips into this release and help you gain ground. So your back foot is the step that you're going to be kicking with, which is essentially where you just kick behind. So you go here, we kick behind to throw my hips and I slide, and now I'm at that good 45-degree angle position to get that DB off his platform. So now, when I do that, and let's say I hit this slide and we're here, my next step is going to be the crossover. So we're trying to make it look like a fade. I slid off the platform, I got him here, we're going to give a jab inside, fake outside, head and shoulders go, or hips and shoulders go, I should say, and then we slip back underneath. So it's a kick step, slide, crossover. I'm going to show you how this thing's going to look full speed. Alright guys, so the next release we're going to be talking about is something called a slide and go release, which builds off of that slide crossover release that we were just talking about. So now let's say maybe you've used that slide release before, and something that all great wide receivers can do is pair their releases together. They can make their releases look the exact same to keep them unpredictable and get in a DB's head essentially. So let's say maybe a couple times we've worked a slide release where you slide to the outside, we cross over, maybe we get the DB pretty good, and I'm able to slip underneath and win on a slant. So now that can also set you up on a fade. So what you can do is something called a slide and go. So it's very important that we have the same tempo, it's the same angle, and it's pretty much looks the exact same until it's not. So you guys are going to be here, it's the same type of kick step, same type of shade from a DB inside shade. We kick behind, we slide on the angle, kind of take some gather steps, and then we take off. So this is when that DB tries to start anticipating what we're doing. He sits to the inside, maybe we beat him on a slant, maybe he's seen that slide crossover release on film before, but it's a way to build off of that slide cross. And it could go either way. Maybe one time you're backside on a play and you have to run a fade, because everybody's got that. I'm sure everybody's a backside on a run play. You got man coverage, you hit him with a little slide and go. Then maybe when you have to run a slant, we hit him with a slide, crossover, and run the slant. You can pair these two releases off of each other to be able to create you separation. So slide and go release is when you have a DB who's, again, inside shade. You've used the slide before, but we just slide and take off. I'm going to show you how this thing's going to look full speed. All right guys, so the next release that we're going to be talking about is something called a split jab release. So it's essentially where you're going to be doing a split release and then throwing a jab to throw off a DB to attack his leverage or whatever the situation might be. But I'm sure all of you have seen this release called the split release before. So a split release is essentially exactly how it sounds. You're going to bring your back foot up even with your front foot, and your front foot is going to go out. So you're essentially splitting your feet and coming to balance. Now when you come to balance like this, you could take an inside release, you could take an outside release, but the split jab is a way to take an inside or an outside release but add a little something extra to it. So maybe let's say you come up to the line and you got a guy who's in head up press, and let's say you got to run a fade. Ideally on a fade, what type of release do we want to take? We want to take an outside release, right? So if I come up to the line and let's say I want to take that outside release, I could give a split jab to the inside with this inside foot, get that DB to sit to the inside, and then take off to the outside. And then vice versa. Let's say I got to run a route like, let's say it's a dig. On a dig, ideally we want the inside release. So we come up here, we split, jab to the outside, and then take the inside release and run that dig. But it's a way to throw off that DB. Now, that regular split release, where you guys come up to the line and you're here and you split, is a great release for head up press. But that split jab is something you could use against inside shade, outside shade. You could use it when a DB is showing a specific leverage. So let's say, for example, you got to run like a 10-yard out. DB lines up, he's an inside shade press. I could split jab and then take off and take that outside release. It's a way to build off of the original split release, but also have a way to attack a leverage or threaten a DB a certain way. So I'm going to show you how this release is going to look full speed. All right guys, so this next release that we're going to be talking about is something called a triple step release, or some people call this an icky shuffle release. So I personally like this when the DB is lined up in outside shade press, but maybe he's about 2 to 3 yards away, and so there's some cushion between the two of you guys. So this orange cone is going to be simulating where the wide receiver is lined up, quarterback is to the inside here, blue cone is simulating where the defender is. So anytime, we got to understand this anytime it comes to press releases, when a DB is lined up at a specific leverage, outside leverage, he is trying to prevent a route to his leverage. So if he's outside shade of you, which means essentially lined up to the outside, that's how we know his leverage. He's trying to prevent the outside route. He's trying to prevent me from getting around him and running a fade, running an out, running a comeback, whatever it might be. And then same thing, when that DB's lined up inside shade, what do you think he's trying to prevent? The inside route. He wants to force everything to the outside. So number one thing with your press release is that where the DB's leverage is, chances are most of the time we want to threaten him to that leverage. Threaten him where he doesn't want you to go. So when you come up to the line, and instead of him being right up in your face and press, there's a gap. I call that cushion. You always want to close the cushion with the DB. Let's say, for example, you got to run a corner route, right? And you get this type of look where the DB's outside shade. If you just give a move to the outside, then take off to the inside, but there's a big gap, that gap is just time for that DB to be able to recover, take the angle, get hands on you, and whatever, disrupt the timing with the quarterback, which is his goal in press coverage in the first place. So what we have to do is we have to close the cushion with something called that triple step or icky shuffle release. So they call it an icky shuffle release because I'm sure you guys have all seen that like ladder drill before, where you go 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, you take those 3 steps in and out, right? That's essentially what you're trying to do with this release. It's 2 quicks, but instead of just a quick step out of the box, it's a heavy third step out of the box. So you go here, we take that same kick step that we've been talking about, we kick, 1, 2, 3. Now those 2 quick steps, close space, close the cushion, third step threatens the leverage of the DB, so now we're close, and when I take that inside release, I could stay tight, work to stack, or get skinny on the route, whatever the situation requires. But that triple step release or icky shuffle release is a great way to be able to get space. I'm going to show you this thing's going to look full speed. All right guys, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. We always appreciate the feedback. It's always great to hear from you guys. And again, fellas, if you would like a 4-month daily gym training schedule to follow specifically for wide receivers, check out that very first link in that description below. We'd love to get you on that. I'll see you guys next time.